From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. No signs that COVID-19 is slowing down in Montana, and that will soon lead to earlier closing signs on many businesses. Governor Steve Bullock issued another round of COVID-19 orders today, tightening restrictions across the state. That new set of statewide public health restrictions aimed at curbing the spread of the coronavirus and taking some pressure off of exhausted frontline workers. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian reports on what the new rules are and what they'll mean for Montana.
Governor Steve Bullock said Tuesday that as the number of COVID-19 cases across Montana continued to spike and healthcare workers statewide were under strain, the state needed to take additional action to slow the virus's spread.
We're all sick of this virus. We all have to collectively recognize that this virus won't stop spreading through our communities at any time soon unless we take active steps to stop its spread. The responsibility for doing that rests with each and every one of us.
As of Friday, bars, restaurants, breweries, distilleries, and casinos will have to operate at no more than 50% capacity and close by 10 p.m. They will also have to limit groups to 6 people or fewer. Public gatherings will be limited to 25 people when social distancing isn't possible or isn't practiced. The directive doesn't change requirements for schools or religious services. It does urge Montanans to limit gatherings, including private ones in their homes, to 15 people. Bullock also extended mandatory face coverings to all counties, regardless of their number of active cases, though only 2 counties were currently exempted. Bullock said in order to address some of the impact of the new restrictions, he will redirect unused federal COVID relief money to additional aid, including $75 million for another round of business stabilization grants, and $25 million to provide $200 supplemental payments for Montanans who lost work because of COVID. But he said that relief would not be enough and urged the federal government to approve more aid. Bullock said the reports of progress on potential COVID-19 vaccines are good news. But with mass distribution still a long way away, Montanans have to take steps to get through a difficult period.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. However, that tunnel is long. And Montana and most other states are squarely in the middle of it.
The new rules will take effect across the state Friday at 5 a.m. In Helena, Jonathan Ambarian, MTN News.
Bullock also announced today that the state is working on bringing in 100 additional healthcare workers to assist hospitals and other facilities around the state, particularly those that have staff shortages because employees are in isolation or quarantine. And it appears that more restrictions may soon be coming to Yellowstone County as well. Yellowstone County Health Officer John Felton will be announcing a new health officer order this Thursday. Felton will detail the order at a news conference beginning at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Restaurants, bars, and casinos have been operating at 75% capacity since the governor put the state into phase 2 in June. One restaurant manager in Billings is worried about the income of her staff, which mostly relies on tips. That's not uncommon for many servers. Now, if capacity is reduced and fewer people come in, many area servers come home largely empty-handed at the end of the day. At the Montana Brewing Company, management will cut down on the number of tables, do some rearranging to ensure 6 feet of space between patrons.
Businesses that have been following the rules over the last, 6 weeks have been down in sales 60 to 80% and just growing. So this is going to definitely cut into that as well. So we worry for our community, for other business owners, and also for our staff. So right now we still have everything spaced out 6 feet. But we're at 75%. So to accommodate the 50%, we're going to have to put some chairs away. We're going to have to close some more of the booths. We just won't have as many options for people to come in and dine in.
Now, Lehman encouraged the community to support local restaurants by purchasing gift cards and ordering takeout during the time that they're at reduced operating capacity. Montana did report 1,500 new cases of coronavirus today, along with 19 more COVID-19 related deaths. 2 of those victims here in Yellowstone County. Well, Bighorn County reported the county's 46th death tonight. Cascade County saw the biggest jump in deaths with 4 more. MTN reports the total deaths across Montana has now reached 572, and there are nearly 18,000 confirmed active cases tonight. And as COVID cases and deaths surge, one of the largest and most continuous public gatherings in the state is approaching the date for its biennial meeting, the Montana legislature. Now, how will the 2021 legislature operate starting in January with a pandemic raging? As MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison tells us, the details are far from settled.
In normal times, the Montana legislature means hundreds of legislators, other elected officials, lobbyists, staffers, and the public all crammed into the Capitol for 4 months. This year, no.
Our legislative session for 2021 cannot look the same. It cannot look the same.
Neiman, the county public health director in Helena, says it's a super spreader event waiting to happen and is urging lawmakers to find ways to limit the number of people in the Capitol while still conducting their business. But the county doesn't have jurisdiction over the legislature or maybe the Capitol, so it's up to legislative leaders and incoming Governor Greg Gianforte to decide what to do. Gianforte's transition team says he wants to ensure the health of lawmakers, staff, and others at the session, but didn't provide any details on what that means. Incoming Senate President Mark Blaisdell, a Republican from Kalispell, says most GOP lawmakers intend to be at the session in person, but that accommodations will be made for legislators who don't, such as remote voting.
Obviously, we're going to have to respect each and every person because some are going to have more concerns than others. And just like you see in Montana, we have a very diverse feeling on the whole COVID issue.
Yet even something as simple as wearing a mask is a point of contention.
I think that mask wearing is going to be essential, and I hope that we can follow the science on that.
I know there's members on my side of the caucus that will not wear a mask, as well as on the other side, there's some that are adamant that everybody does wear them. So that's a real challenge.
The public is required to wear masks in the Capitol, but legislators apparently are exempt if they choose. But what about the public's access during the session? Blaisdell and Abbott say it's vital to maintain that access, and legislative staff is investigating ways that can happen online or in limited numbers or in larger rooms in other state buildings outside the Capitol.
Obviously, we're going to need to limit numbers, and how we do that with equity in a fair way for everyone that has an interest in participating in legislative business is a question that we have to answer.
Neiman also says it's not just Helena that could be affected by how the legislature chooses to operate.
We have legislators traveling in from all parts of the state into one location, and going back from Helena back to their communities. And so with that comes risk.
Lawmakers from both parties meet Wednesday to choose their leaders for the 2021 session, and they'll get together in the coming weeks to hammer out the operational details. Blaisdell says it likely will come down to how each legislator chooses to do his or her job.
Each member's signed up to represent, and I think it's important that they get to represent in the way and the fashion that they believe they can do the best job for their constituents.
One Republican lawmaker told me it's inevitable that people will become infected with COVID-19 at the session. But as one Democratic lawmaker said, we dedicate our lives to this work. No one should have to give their life for it too. At the Capitol, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
At this point, the session is scheduled to convene in Helena on January 4th. Well, President Donald Trump announced today on Twitter that he has fired Chris Krebs, who ran the cyber arm of the Department of Homeland Security. This comes just days after Krebs' agency and several others declared this month's election the most secure in American history, refuting the president's claims that he made after losing that it had been rigged. The Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency was established in 2018 under the Trump administration as a branch of Homeland Security. Krebs was the first director named of that agency. As President-elect Joe Biden prepares to take office, his transition team is in the process of vetting New Mexico Representative Deb Haaland for the Interior Secretary post. In 2018, Haaland became one of the first 2 Native American women elected to Congress. If tapped by Biden, she would become the first Native American cabinet secretary in the nation's history, overseeing an agency with vast responsibility over tribal issues and public lands. Biden has vowed that his new cabinet and administration will be very diverse and, quote, look like America. All right, turning to Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire. With the weather warming up, that means it's time for a favorite fall activity, raking leaves. I'm
Maybe
kidding about that. It's not mine.
Well, you know what I was saying, maybe in my yard, I still got some leaves, not my leaves, they're from my neighbor's yard, and they're all in your yard. So here's the problem. So you're going to rake them up? Well, we have our first ever raking forecast. Check this out. Here's what we're talking about. Maybe we're going to do it on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Well, here's what we have. The good news here is that we're not expecting any rain on either of those 3 days. It might be a little windy, though. Winds will be light on Friday, a little breezy on Saturday, and again on Sunday, but the ground's expected to be dry all 3 of those days. So the way things are shaping up, looks like nothing will stop you, except maybe you want to do something fun on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, something other than raking the leaves. Weather's not going to get in your way is what we're trying to say. And we'll have your forecast in a few minutes.
All right, thank you, Bob. We now know the name and fate of a woman who crashed her truck on South Billings Boulevard Saturday night. Yellowstone County Assistant Coroner Rich Hoffman says that 32-year-old Sydney Wheeler of Sheridan, Wyoming, died from injuries she sustained in that crash. Police tried to pull over the Ford pickup after Wheeler ran a red light. Police say Wheeler took off at high speeds, and although the officer did not chase her, she lost control of the vehicle, left the roadway, rolled, and struck the Mountain Supply building. Well, November is Diabetes Awareness Month, a disease that affects more than 30 million Americans. Tonight, Q2 Shaquille Kozart talks with a Billings student who was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes more than a decade ago about how she copes and is also trying to make a difference.
Madison Martinez is a 19-year-old sophomore at Montana State University Billings, majoring in psychology. She said her life passion is to advocate for chronically ill kids and teach them to embrace their diagnosis and not let it hold them back. This passion comes 10 years after she herself received news that she had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
My sister and I were kind of playing around like on the stairs like anyone would do. We were just kind of like roughhousing a little bit, and I actually ended up falling down like 3 steps. And I hit right here, like in my back, and it just really, really hurt.
Martinez said that her back pain lasted abnormally long, so her and her family decided to go to the pediatric clinic. And after explaining her situation to the doctor and further investigation, the doctor decided to test her for type 1 diabetes. And when the test came back positive, Martinez's life took a drastic change.
A lot of times I have to prioritize like getting a good night rest. Like I can't just like cram for a final and be like, I'm staying up and then I'm going to take the test. Like that's not going to work for me because my blood sugars are going to be all over the place. So I need to plan on like that aspect. And then from there, like even just normal day life, like I obviously can't eat or drink or do anything without taking insulin or testing my blood sugar.
The recommendation for a patient with type 1 diabetes is to check the blood sugar using a finger poke 6 to 10 times per day. Also, they should inject insulin every time they eat, which is generally meals and then also at bedtime. So if you think about how you eat through the day, most people eat 3 meals and then a couple of snacks. So that can be upwards of 6 to 10 shots as well.
Martinez says that even though type 1 diabetes has changed her life, she won't let the disease hold her back.
I try to stay positive as much as possible, but there's times where like that's just like not doable, and I'd be the first one to admit like if you're gonna fight anything, like you better give it your all. Like you better have bad days where you cry and like you don't want to get out of bed, because if not, it's just gonna like really hold you back.
Reporting in Billings, I'm Shaquille Kozart with MTN News.
Thank you, Shaquille. Dr. Wood says that especially during these times, we have to be cognizant of those with underlying health conditions, no matter the age. Still to come on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2, from Thanksgiving dinner to toys under the Christmas tree. Q2 viewers once again showed their generosity on this Turkey Tuesday. We'll tell you more about that. And in sports, well, a season unlike any other. Bobcats basketball just weeks away from tipping off. We'll hear from them coming up in a bit.